What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable actors sits down with daytime television's most opinionated host and refuses to play by her rules? Well, you get one of the most explosive television moments ever captured on live TV, and trust me, you're not going to believe how this unfolds. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me which celebrity you think would handle Joy Behar better than Tom Hardy did. Because after you see what happened here, you might change your mind about who really runs the show. It was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance. Tom Hardy, fresh off his latest blockbuster success, was scheduled for a standard celebrity interview segment on The View. The plan was simple: discuss his new film, share a few anecdotes about working with his co-stars, maybe touch on his charitable work, and wrap up with some lighthearted banter. But from the moment Hardy walked onto that set, something felt different. The energy was tense, electric even, and Joy Behar seemed particularly charged up that morning. "So, Tom," Joy began, her voice carrying that familiar edge that regular viewers knew meant trouble, "I have to ask you about your comments regarding method acting and how you prepare for roles. Some critics are saying you take things too far, that maybe you're just showing off rather than actually improving your craft." Hardy's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Anyone who knew the actor understood that questioning his dedication to his craft was like waving a red flag at a bull. "I'm sorry. What exactly are you referring to?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an underlying steel that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Oh, come on," Joy pressed, clearly relishing the moment. "The extreme physical transformations, the staying in character between takes, some people think it's all just publicity stunts. I mean, how much of it is real commitment and how much is just Tom Hardy trying to be the bad boy of Hollywood?" The other hosts exchanged glances. This wasn't the direction anyone had expected the interview to take, and Hardy's publicist, sitting just off camera, looked like she was ready to intervene. But Hardy held up a subtle hand, signaling he could handle this himself. "I think," Hardy said, leaning forward slightly, "that you might be confusing dedication with publicity stunts. When I transform my body for a role, when I spend months learning new skills, when I immerse myself completely in a character's world, it's because the story deserves that level of respect. The audience deserves that level of authenticity." Joy's eyebrows shot up. "Authenticity? Is that what we're calling it? Because to me, it looks like an actor who can't separate himself from his roles, who maybe has some deeper issues he's working through on screen instead of dealing with them like a normal person would." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to pause, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Hardy's eyes narrowed, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a dangerous quiet that made everyone lean in. "Are you seriously suggesting that I use my roles as therapy? That my commitment to my craft is somehow a psychological defect?" Hardy's accent seemed to thicken as his anger built. "Because if that's the case, then I think we need to have a very different conversation about what constitutes professional journalism versus cheap tabloid psychology." Joy wasn't backing down. If anything, Hardy's pushback seemed to energize her more. "I'm not saying it's a defect, Tom. But let's be honest here. Your reputation precedes you. The incidents on set, the conflicts with directors, the way you've walked away from interviews before. It paints a picture of someone who maybe can't handle criticism, someone who hides behind this tough guy persona instead of having real conversations." "Incidents on set?" Hardy repeated, his voice rising for the first time. "What incidents are you talking about specifically, Joy? Because I've worked with some of the most respected directors in the industry, and I'd love to hear which one of them told you I was difficult to work with." The tension was palpable. Whoopi Goldberg tried to jump in with a diplomatic comment about different working styles, but Joy cut her off with a wave of her hand. "Oh, I don't need directors to tell me anything," Joy shot back. "I can see it right here, right now. The defensiveness, the aggression, the way you're sitting there acting like I've personally attacked your mother instead of asking legitimate questions about your career choices. This is exactly what I'm talking about." Hardy stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoed through the studio. The audience gasped collectively, and security personnel visibly tensed, though they remained at their posts. "You want to know what's aggressive, Joy?" Hardy's voice was controlled but intense. "Aggressive is ambushing a guest with personal attacks disguised as journalism. Aggressive is using your platform to tear down someone's life work based on gossip and speculation. Aggressive is thinking you can psychoanalyze someone you've known for all of 10 minutes. Joy's eyes lit up with what could only be described as predatory satisfaction. She had him exactly where she wanted him, emotional and reactive. "There it is," she said with a triumphant smile. "The real Tom Hardy. Not the charming movie star, not the dedicated artist, but the angry man who can't handle being questioned by a woman." The audience erupted in surprised murmurs. This was television gold, but it was also deeply uncomfortable to watch. Hardy's hands clenched at his sides, and for a moment, everyone in the studio held their breath, wondering what would happen next. "A woman?" Hardy's voice was incredulous. "This has nothing to do with your gender, Joy. This has to do with your complete lack of professionalism. You've turned what should have been a conversation about my work into a personal attack, and now you're trying to make it about sexism when I call you out on it?" Sarah Haynes attempted to interject with a question about Hardy's upcoming projects, clearly trying to steer the interview back to safer ground, but the momentum was unstoppable now. Joy and Hardy were locked in a battle of wills that had moved far beyond the boundaries of a typical daytime television interview. "Personal attack?" Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I asked you about your methods and your reputation. If you can't handle that level of scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. Maybe you should stick to your little independent films where nobody asks the hard questions." Hardy's publicist was frantically making hand signals from the sidelines, but he was beyond caring about damage control now. "Little independent films? You mean the ones that actually tell stories worth telling instead of feeding into the celebrity gossip machine that keeps shows like this profitable?" The insult hung in the air like a challenge. Joy's face flushed red, and the other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. This had gone from uncomfortable to potentially career-ending for everyone involved. Joy's eyes flashed with a fury that could have melted steel. The comment about her show being part of a celebrity gossip machine had struck exactly where Hardy intended it to, right at the heart of her professional pride. She leaned forward in her chair, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "Oh, you want to talk about stories worth telling, Tom? Let's talk about your story. Let's talk about the real reason you're so defensive about your methods. Let's talk about your past struggles with addiction and how convenient it must be to hide behind character research when you're really just reliving old patterns." The studio went dead silent. This was a line that should never have been crossed on daytime television, and everyone knew it. Hardy's face went white, then red, as the implications of what Joy had just said sank in. His sobriety was something he had been open about in the past, but always on his own terms, never as a weapon used against him in a hostile interview. "You did not just go there," Hardy said, his voice so low it was barely audible. "You did not just use my recovery as ammunition in your petty little power game." Joy doubled down, sensing blood in the water. "I'm just asking the questions that everyone else is too polite to ask. If you're going to sit here and judge my show, my professionalism, maybe we should examine what qualifies you to make those judgments. Maybe we should talk about the years you spent making choices that nearly destroyed your career before it even started." Whoopi Goldberg finally found her voice. "Joy, I think we need to step back here." "No," Joy snapped without taking her eyes off Hardy. "He wants to come on my show and insult my work. He can handle a few hard questions about his own life choices." Hardy's hands were shaking now, but not with fear. With pure, concentrated rage. "My life choices? You mean the life choices that led me to get clean, to build a career, to become someone who actually contributes something meaningful to the world? Unlike sitting behind a desk throwing stones at people who are actually out there doing the work? Meaningful contributions?" Joy's voice was mocking now. "You pretend to be other people for a living, Tom. You dress up and play make-believe. Don't lecture me about meaningful contributions to society." "I pretend to be other people," Hardy repeated slowly, "to tell stories that matter. Stories about human struggle, about overcoming obstacles, about finding strength in the face of adversity. What do? You tear people down on national television to boost your ratings." The audience was completely transfixed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a gladiatorial combat playing out in real time. Sarah Haynes made another attempt at intervention, but Hardy cut her off with a sharp gesture. "No, let her finish," he said, his eyes never leaving Joy's face. "Let America see exactly what kind of person hosts this show. Let them see how she treats guests who don't bow down and kiss her ring." Joy's smile was purely predatory now. "Kiss my ring? Is that what you think this is about? You come in here with your leather jacket and your tough guy attitude, thinking you can intimidate me because I'm asking you to be accountable for your actions?" "Accountable for my actions?" Hardy's voice was rising again. "What actions, Joy? Being honest about my past? Working hard to build a career? Refusing to let you turn me into your personal punching bag for the entertainment of your audience?" "Your personal punching bag?" Joy laughed harshly. "You're the one who started throwing insults the minute I asked you a simple question about your methods. You're the one who can't handle a woman challenging your precious artistic vision." "There it is again," Hardy said, pointing at her. "Every time you get called out for being unprofessional, you hide behind your gender. As if being a woman gives you a free pass to be cruel, manipulative, and completely lacking in basic human decency." The other hosts looked like they were witnessing a car crash in slow motion. Joy's face was now a deep red, and her voice, when she spoke, was tight, with barely controlled fury. "Lacking in human decency? That's rich coming from someone who walked out of multiple interviews when he didn't like the questions. Someone who has a reputation for being impossible to work with. Someone who thinks his little artistic tantrums make him some kind of misunderstood genius." "I walk out of interviews," Hardy said, his voice deadly calm now, "when so-called journalists decide to ambush me with personal attacks instead of doing their jobs. I walk out when people like you decide that destroying someone's dignity is more important than having an actual conversation." "Destroying your dignity?" Joy's voice was incredulous. "Your dignity destroyed itself the moment you decided to throw a tantrum because I asked you about your reputation. This is what you do, Tom. You create chaos and then blame everyone else when they call you out on it." Hardy took a step closer to the desk, and security personnel shifted nervously. "I create chaos? You invited me here under false pretenses, ambushed me with personal attacks, brought up my private struggles with addiction on national television, and I'm the one creating chaos?" "You're damn right you are," Joy shot back. "You're standing there looming over me, raising your voice, acting like you're going to physically intimidate me into backing down. This is exactly the behavior I was talking about. I'm not intimidating you, Joy. I'm responding to your attacks with the energy you brought to this conversation. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. But don't you dare turn around and play the victim when someone finally stands up to your bullying." The word bullying seemed to hit Joy like a physical blow. Her eyes narrowed to slits, and when she spoke again, her voice was pure venom. "Bullying? You want to talk about bullying? How about we talk about the crew members on your films who have to walk on eggshells around your moods? How about we talk about the directors who have described working with you as a nightmare? How about we talk about the real Tom Hardy, not this manufactured bad boy persona you've created to sell movie tickets?" Hardy's jaw worked silently for a moment, as if he was physically restraining himself from saying something he would regret. When he finally spoke, his voice was so controlled, it was almost robotic. "You don't know anything about the real Tom Hardy, Joy. You know gossip, rumors, and whatever narrative fits your agenda for today's show. You've never worked with me. You've never spent time with me. You've never made any effort to understand who I actually am as a person or as an artist. I don't need to spend time with you to see what's right in front of me," Joy replied. "An actor who can't handle criticism, who gets violent when challenged, who thinks his fame gives him the right to treat people however he wants." "Violent?" Hardy's voice was incredulous. "When have I been violent? When have I treated anyone poorly? You're literally making things up now to justify your behavior. You don't have to hit someone to be violent, Tom. The way you're standing, the way you're talking, the energy you're putting out there, it's all intimidation tactics. It's all designed to make me back down and stop asking the hard questions." Hardy shook his head in disbelief. "The hard questions? Joy, you haven't asked me a single question about my work, my craft, my upcoming projects, anything that would actually inform your audience. You've spent this entire interview attacking me personally, and then claiming it's journalism." The tension in the studio was so thick it was almost suffocating. The audience sat in stunned silence. The camera operators continued filming despite the chaos, and the other hosts looked like they were praying for a commercial break that wasn't coming. Joy stood up from her chair now, matching Hardy's energy and refusing to be intimidated. The power dynamic had shifted completely from host and guest to two adversaries facing off in what had become a very public battleground. You want to talk about journalism, Tom? Real journalism means asking the questions that make people uncomfortable. It means not letting celebrities hide behind their publicists and their carefully crafted images. It means holding people accountable for their actions and their reputations. Accountability? Hardy's laugh was bitter and harsh. You want to talk about accountability? How about you account for why you've turned this show into a platform for personal vendettas? How about you account for why you think your personal opinions about my life are more important than having a professional conversation? Joy's voice rose to match his intensity. My personal opinions? Everything I've said about you today is based on documented behavior, on reports from people who have worked with you, on your own admissions about your past. I'm not making anything up. I'm just not sugarcoating it the way everyone else does. Documented behavior? Hardy's eyes blazed. Show me the documentation, Joy. Show me one credible source that says I'm difficult to work with. Show me one director who has publicly complained about working with me. You can't, because you're basing your entire attack on gossip and speculation. I don't need to show you anything. Joy snapped back. This is my show, and if you don't like the questions, you're free to leave. In fact, maybe that would be best for everyone involved. The suggestion hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Hardy's eyes narrowed, and the studio held its collective breath. Are you kicking me off your show, Joy? Is that what's happening here? Because you can't handle someone who won't just sit there and take your abuse quietly? I'm giving you an opportunity to leave with whatever dignity you have left. Joy replied, her voice ice cold. Because if you stay, I'm going to keep asking the hard questions. And based on your behavior so far, I don't think you can handle it. Hardy looked around the studio, taking in the shocked faces of the other hosts, the frozen expressions of the crew, the wide-eyed stares of the audience. When he spoke again, his voice carried a devastating calm. You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right. I can't handle it. I can't handle sitting here while you use your platform to spread lies and attack someone's character for entertainment. I can't handle watching you destroy the credibility of journalism by calling personal attacks hard questions. And I definitely can't handle being part of whatever sick game you're playing here. Joy's smile was triumphant, but there was something hollow about it. There we go. The real Tom Hardy, everyone. Runs away the minute things get difficult. Hardy paused in the middle of gathering his composure, turning back to face her with a look that could have cut glass. Running away? No, Joy. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to validate this behavior by participating in it any longer. I'm choosing to maintain my integrity instead of rolling around in the mud with someone who has clearly lost all sense of professional standards. Professional standards? Joy's voice was mocking. You're lecturing me about professional standards while you're storming off my set like a child having a tantrum? I'm not storming off, Hardy said, his voice steady despite the anger radiating from every pore. I'm walking away from a toxic situation that serves no one. Not me, not you, not your audience, and certainly not the concept of meaningful dialogue. Whoopi made one last desperate attempt at damage control. Tom, maybe we can reset here, start over with a different approach. Hardy turned to her with something approaching gentleness in his eyes. Whoopi, I respect you enormously, but there's no resetting from this. Your colleague just spent 20 minutes attacking my character, my sobriety, and my professionalism on national television. There's no coming back from that. Joy wasn't finished. Oh, so now you're the victim? Now you're the one who's been wronged? You came in here with an attitude from the first question, and you're going to blame me for responding to it? Hardy's control finally snapped completely. An attitude? I answered your questions honestly and professionally, until you decided to turn this into a personal attack. I treated you with respect until you made it clear that respect was a one-way street. And now you're going to gaslight me and your audience by pretending this was somehow my fault? Gaslight? Joy's voice was shrill now. You're the one who's been manipulating this entire conversation. playing the victim while being aggressive and intimidating. You're the one who turned a simple interview into a confrontation. Simple interview? Hardy's voice was incredulous. Joy, you literally brought up my addiction recovery as a weapon against me. You questioned my mental health, my professionalism, and my integrity based on nothing but gossip. If that's your idea of a simple interview, then this industry has a much bigger problem than I thought. The security team was starting to move closer, clearly unsure whether they needed to intervene but wanting to be ready. Hardy noticed their movement and held up his hands. Don't worry, he said, addressing them directly. I'm not going to do anything stupid. Unlike some people, I actually have self-control. Joy bristled at the implication. Self-control? You've been yelling and threatening for the past half hour. Threatening? Hardy's voice was deadly quiet now. Show me one threat I've made, Joy. Show me one moment where I've threatened you with anything other than holding you accountable for your behavior. The way you've been standing, the way you've been talking, it's all been designed to intimidate me. I've been standing and talking like someone who refuses to be bullied on national television. If you find that intimidating, maybe you should reconsider your approach to interviewing guests. Joy's face was purple with rage now. Get him out of here, she said to the security team. I want him off my set right now. Your set? Hardy laughed, but there was no humor in it. This isn't your set, Joy. This is ABC's set. This is a platform that's supposed to serve the public interest, not your personal vendettas. I said get him out of here, Joy repeated, her voice rising to near hysteria levels. The head of security approached Hardy cautiously. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Hardy looked at the man with something approaching pity. Don't worry, I'm going. I wouldn't stay here another second if you paid me. He turned back to Joy one final time. You know what the real tragedy is here, Joy? You had an opportunity to have a real conversation with someone who's passionate about their work, someone who could have shared insights about the creative process, about overcoming personal struggles, about finding meaning through art. Instead, you chose to tear down another human being for entertainment. That says everything anyone needs to know about who you really are. Joy's final response was pure venom. And your inability to handle a few tough questions says everything anyone needs to know about who you really are. Tom Hardy. Hardy shook his head sadly. These weren't tough questions, Joy. Tough questions challenge ideas. They explore motivation. They seek understanding. What you did here today was just cruelty disguised as journalism. As he walked toward the exit, followed by his mortified publicist and the security team, the studio remained in stunned silence. The other hosts sat frozen, unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. The audience looked shell-shocked, as if they had just seen something they weren't supposed to see. Hardy paused at the edge of the set and turned back one final time. For what it's worth, he said, addressing the audience directly, I hope you'll think critically about what you just witnessed here. I hope you'll ask yourselves whether this is really the kind of dialogue we want to normalize in our society. And with that, Tom Hardy walked off the View set, leaving behind one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. Joy remained standing at her desk, breathing heavily, her face still flushed with anger and adrenaline. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath, but nobody seemed to know how to end the segment. The silence stretched on until finally, mercifully, someone in the control room called for a commercial break. But the damage was done, the lines had been crossed, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. So there you have it, the complete breakdown of one of the most intense confrontations ever captured on live television. What do you think? Did Tom Hardy handle himself appropriately, or should he have just walked away earlier? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from behind the scenes of Hollywood. What other celebrity do you think could have handled Joy Behar's aggressive interview style better than Tom Hardy did?